So, welcome back. I have another guest now, a plenary speaker, who gave an excellent speech yesterday, and he's Steve Oakes. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you for accepting our invitation and being here.
pleasure.
My first memory that comes into mind about your plenary is, first of all, the beautiful venue, the huge hall in the Lyceum, and all the ideas that kept coming to me during your session, which we'll talk about in a minute. But before that, could you summarize your plenary session for the viewers who haven't attended it?
Okay. There's two key elements. One of them I talked about is the notion of ambiguity tolerance, which is a learner characteristic. So when somebody learning a language hears something or reads something and they don't understand at all, or they don't understand some of it, well, different learners react in different ways. And learners with low ambiguity tolerance tend to shut down and block. And therefore, when it comes to accessing material that's not graded for their level, and particularly authentic material, they can't really make any progress. They can't interact with the material. And my main point in the plenary was that if teachers can develop learners' ambiguity tolerance, there's different ways of doing this, different exercises, but if they can help the learner become more open to the notion of not understanding and not freaking out about it, then they're going to be better learners.
And what if the teacher, him or herself, is not very good at tolerating ambiguity? Let's say XY teacher. How do you think, let's say I'm myself 31-year-old teacher of English, I'm not very good at, let's say when I learned some Italian, I was quite anxious using authentic materials. How could my teacher have helped me to overcome this ambiguity?
Okay, sort of two questions. That's a really good question, because I think the source of a lot of the anxiety that learners feel in the classroom in relation to not understanding something completely actually comes from the teacher, or is made worse by the teacher, either inadvertently or because the teacher's ambiguity tolerance is low. The teacher needs to recognize that the value of developing learners' ambiguity tolerance, whether they have good ambiguity tolerance or not. That's the starting point. But even without exposing learners to authentic material, the teacher can do a lot towards making learners more relaxed with the notion of not understanding. And I sort of want to stress the point, clarifying that if you think about the landscape of learning a language and using a language, not understanding something is so normal and natural. And meanwhile, a majority of learners have a real issue with it. They block when they don't understand. And it really is, I'm saying it like that so that teachers who might be, listening to this or watching this, who don't recognize the value of it, they just think that if it's normal to not understand things, that really that's the state of mind you want to get to students. You want them to be like, okay, I'm an elementary student, I watched this program or I listened to this thing and I didn't understand maybe 10% or whatever, and okay, that's normal, that's where I'm at. And it's not about anxiety, but I did understand a few things, or whatever. So.
So you think teachers have a central role in kind of promoting this tolerance, but I'm still thinking about this. If a teacher, let's say himself or herself, is not someone who can tolerate ambiguity, how can anyone else help them overcome this? Because I think that's the first barrier to tolerating ambiguity. If the teacher himself or herself can't do it, how can he be or she be authentic about this?
Well, I think a big part of teacher development is exploring what processes and approaches are beneficial to learners. And in doing this, so people who came to my talk or have heard me talk about it, who are the way you described, if they remain closed to the notion that it's advantageous, then I would say they can't help their learners. okay, but
or not
a big part.
authentically presenting it as.
Well, I mean, or not at all. They might just think, well, that's not important, and I believe in graded materials, and I want learners to be comfortable all the time. I want classroom use of language to be very black and white, and making sentences that I predetermine. And some people approach teaching like that, but people who are open to development, I think whatever. If somebody's watching this now, they're open to development. If they're listening and they're interested in new ideas, so whatever the new ideas are they approach, whether it's developing ambiguity tolerance or whatever, I always, as a trainer, I always encourage teachers to go out and try it out, experiment. You might decide that it's not for you, or you're not comfortable with it, or you can't find your way through it. But if you want to stay engaged and really inspired as a teacher, experiment, try stuff out, move out of your comfort zone, do things that maybe you don't believe in. If you're a teacher who always stands up, sit down. If you're a teacher who always sits down, stand up. Just try something different. Okay, it makes it interesting for you. So
can we look at an imagined example, a case study? Let's say, a Hungarian language teacher who teaches English to a group of 30 students on average, let's say in a secondary school. She or he's got, let's say, 25 lessons a week, and they have a set series of course books, whichever they use, and let's say it's not Speak Out, the one that you co-authored, and they cannot really change anything about the method of teaching in a school or the course book series that they're using. How can they somehow put some authentic materials into their lessons?
Yeah, I like that you described a realistic situation, because it's easy for a trainer to kind of idealize it, because one of the key points you mentioned is the number of hours teachers teach a week. And if I could change anything about the profession, it would be that people teach fewer hours so they could actually have time to focus on things and reflect on them and try them out, instead of just trying to survive the week. But regardless of what the materials a teacher is using, so whatever course book they have and they're happy with or not happy with, there's a lot that teachers can do in their approach to even classroom language. So a teacher who teachers ask questions a lot. Now if a teacher examines the questions they ask, they might discover that most of the time, or all of the time, they ask questions that they know the answer to.
Could you give an example?
Yes, for example, I'm teaching elementary level or starter level, hair color or something like that, and I go around the class and I'm personalizing. I say, so what color is his hair, and what color is your hair, and your hair, right? And I'm testing and I'm practicing, and it's personalized and it's communicative. No, it's not, because everybody knows the answer actually, right? But if the question becomes that's called a display question. Right? Teacher knows the answer, and the purpose of it is to get the learner to display what they understand or what they know. And they have a particular function in a language class. If that's all the teacher asks, then learners are going to feel that language learning is about getting it right, giving the teacher what they want. But if a teacher makes an effort to ask more so-called reference questions, so it's not what color is your hair, but do you have a brother or sister? What color is their hair? Okay, I'm the teacher. I don't know the answer, right? Maybe your brother has brown hair and you say red. Okay, that's okay. I mean, in a way, it's a situation where it isn't about getting it right or wrong. It's about expressing something that comes from you that you want to express. So if, as a teacher, I try to get learners to express more about their experiences, feelings, attitudes, and things like that, and referring out of the classroom, and if I ask more questions that I don't know the answer to, even how was your weekend, but not the sort of superficial how was your weekend, a real question, and really taking interest, that changes the dynamic of the classroom, because it really is about what people are communicating with the language and not about making sentences. It's a very, it's a basic step in developing openness towards language.
And have you been to schools? Have you talked to teachers about your this theory of tolerance of ambiguity? What's your experience? What's the present state in Hungary, let's say, or internationally?
Yeah, my experience in talking to teachers about this is that they say, "Ooh, that's interesting. I hadn't really thought about that very much as something I need to think about a lot." B, a lot of teachers feel their hands are a little bit tied. I mean, I can't say that teachers haven't said to me, you know, it's interesting, but it's not for me, or it's not for my environment. I mean, by and large, I find that teachers who I come into contact with are really open to development, and I think this is something that they, you know, whether they put it in the forefront or they put it on the back burner, it's something that they take into consideration and maybe will work on. I think teacher development best happens through practice and reflection, and it can be really useful to have an observer in, or somebody, whether it's a trainer or a colleague, and you know, things like this to focus on. You know, so if I'm a teacher in a whatever school, state school or private language school, who's almost never observed, as most teachers aren't, to have a colleague come in and just ask them, you know, so, you know, write down my questions. How much do I, you know, ask real questions? You know, just get me started on that. Or am I doing things that cause anxiety for my students? I mean, anxiety can't possibly help the learning process. So simple things like that. So
you're saying that the whole process starts in the teacher's head, so to say, or attitude towards them teaching the language and how they approach teaching itself. Right?
Well, I mean, it's talking about it from the point of view of teacher development. I would say yes, it starts in the teacher's head. I wouldn't leave the learner's head out of it, because, you know, in a way, you know, it's teaching is about initiating processes that are actually going to happen in the learner's head and body and mouth and whatever, but it's about inducing things to happen in the learner. But in the way we're talking about it, yeah, it's got to start here.
Okay, let's say that someone's decided to use more authentic materials in the classroom. Where can they turn to? Who can they turn to for help, or what do you suggest?
Well, it's ironic now, because with the internet, you know, unlike 15-20 years ago, when, you know, authentic materials were sort of present, but you know, you could sort of go and get a Time magazine article or something like that, and that's what people did. And now with the internet, there's this amazing resource of reading, listening, video, free. And you think, great, but a teacher's preparation time, instead of going down, is going up, because actually going through and sorting out, thinking what's going to be good for my lesson, and, you know, will students like this? And if it's listening or video, you actually have to go through it. You need technical expertise to actually find something you think is going to work, and then you have to develop it into a lesson. So that's an impediment to people teaching 25 hours a week. You know, most of people like that don't have the time or energy to sit and create lessons. But there are a lot of teachers, and more who have taken the time, and because they like to share, they actually create a website where they have, you know, for example, video lessons they've created. There's actually a lot of these, you know, a lot of these resources, and it's a matter of sitting on the internet and, you know, putting in, you know, English video lessons, and you get all kinds of hits with a video, you know, there, and the worksheets. And I think in the meanwhile, there's more and more pressure on publishers and materials writers to create material, teaching material around authentic materials that are pre-selected and pre-tested in a way in different contexts that are going to work with a given level.
So you think that the Speak Out series has kind of kicked off a spiral, so to say, a domino effect, that other publishers are going to go in this direction?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things happening in course book material writing. There's a lot of changes happening, and this is one. So that, you know, Speak Out incorporates these authentic videos and creates lessons around them. I imagine, I mean, they're so powerful and the response is so positive. I imagine, I can guess that other publishers and other materials writers for the same publisher are going to start bringing that element in. But there's so many other things that are happening with digitalization that it really is a bit of, you know, like, who knows, like what's the course book going to look like in 5 years or 10 years? And, you know, we can't imagine how quickly it'll change. So, I mean, I think because, you know, because authentic video is so, you can make it work at any level. It's incredibly beneficial. It's incredibly powerful. I mean, the students we teach are, you know, you could say the YouTube generation. When you put a video on, or you put it into their hands, you know, for them to look at home, it speaks their language in figurative terms. And I think, you know, therefore, authentic video will have greater and greater prominence as a resource that more and more learners use and teachers draw on as well.
Okay, one final question, Steve. Tell us, or our viewers, about your experiences at this conference. what have you seen? How do you feel about this whole experience?
I mean, I love these conferences because, I mean, as in, you know, the IATEFL conferences, and I've been to quite a few IATEFL-Hungary conferences because I've lived in Hungary for 20 years, but I've also, in the last couple of years, I've been to IATEFL in, you know, in the UK and a couple in Poland, in Serbia, et cetera, and the thing I like about all the IATEFL conferences is you go there and there's a really good energy and a dedicated group of teachers who challenge the speaker. So when you go to do a talk, and particularly a plenary, you can feel it. They don't want to hear what they heard last year. They want something. They want to be provoked, and I love provoking people.
And discussing it later on.
Yes, yeah. They want something new that'll spark them. And it's true that people do want something they can go into the classroom with Monday morning, and they get that from workshops. Now the IATEFL-Hungary conferences I particularly like because I see a lot of people I know. I've been in Hungary 20 years, and it's a great kind of get together. And I've enjoyed just interacting with people, hearing their ideas, hearing their response to mine. So it's good energy.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks for coming, and see you later in one of the sessions.
Thank you.